Hey guys, Tom Barclay here at Spurs' stadium. For once, doing it in here instead. And Tottenham are staying up. Wow, it was a nerve-shredding day, wasn't it? But they got the job done in the end. West Ham won convincingly, but Spurs won their game. Their first league home victory of 2026, which really underlines how much Spurs' fans have been put through the ringer. And whilst I'm sure other supporters will probably mock Tottenham fans for celebrating just about staying up, but you can totally understand it. A year ago in a day, they were taken to the streets outside for that parade to celebrate being champions of Europe. Here, the nerves were so much that they would drop into the Championship and lose that ever-present status of being in the Premier League. But the team went and done it, and they showed grit and determination when they needed to. And for all that's come before from this sort of shambolic season, really, there's a lot to be learned from it. You've got to give credit to the team, the fans, and most of all, Roberto De Zerbi'a for presiding over it. First of all, guys, I'm going to do a little review of the game. I just want to say, for everyone who's sort of followed these videos throughout the season, I'm massively appreciative. I hope to do more next season, particularly now sort of Tottenham staying in the Premier League. So please, as ever, like and subscribe. Hype, it makes a big difference. I'll endeavour to do more where I can. Maybe try and do it more frequently next season. Obviously, if you don't follow the Tottenham Way or my work for the Sun, please do. So find me on Twitter at Tom Barclay _. And I imagine we'll be doing a review of this game and lots of other content on the Tottenham Way going forward on that channel at the Tottenham Way Pod. So go and check that out. As I say, thank you so much for all the support you've given. I know at times it's been a bit infrequent, me doing these videos, but I do fit them in where I can. Anyway, I want to talk a little bit about the game and then briefly about Spurs next season and what we can look forward to, I think. So, first of all, De Zerbi stuck with the same 11, barring Jed Spence coming from Randa Colomawani, and I feel like he was almost forced into it. Mawani's terrible performance at Stamford Bridge, ineffectual, meant that it was time to change it up. And Spence, obviously, high off the fact that he's made the England squad. Slightly surprised by that, based on the fact he can't really get in the Tottenham team as someone who covers England, but fair play to him. Really hope he goes and makes the most of it and leads England to World Cup glory. He started right wing, and I thought he was really industrious, put himself about more than Mawani has. Obviously, he's more of a defender and a physical player, but I thought he did really well in his unnatural position. And Spurs went into this game, as much as there were nerves in the crowd, and it was a super hot day, enough to sweat anyway, but with all the extra tension, I'm sure pretty much every fan out here would have sweated through their t-shirt before even getting to the ground. Spurs started the game pretty well. They had a couple of early chances from Gallagher, from Danzo, and Everton really didn't have much of a threat. And it felt like quite early on, to be honest, even though this is Spurs, there's always the chance they can mess it up. It felt like Spurs' biggest obstacle to staying up was less so Everton, more Tottenham, self-inflicted, making a mistake. And it kind of proved to be the case. Obviously, the goal comes just before half-time, perfect time for them to score. And it's that man, João Palhinha. I think it couldn't be more fitting, really, that he gets the goal. It's his 7th goal this season. Once again, an absolutely crucial goal, just like he scored in those 2 games against Wolves. Where would they be without his goals? And yes, there have been talks about his limitations on the ball, but what he does have are balls. He's got balls the size of this stadium, honestly. He's the kind of player you want. I thought before the game maybe I would have gone with Bissouma as more progressive passer, but given the tension and the nerves, he's the kind of player you wanted, and he stepped up just when you needed it most. Great header onto the post. Very unlucky it didn't go in first time from Tell's corner, but he had the wherewithal to turn in the rebound. Tieno Barry trying his best to clear it off the line, but it had crossed the line, and it was a lovely celebration, racing over to the dugout, doing his heart celebration just like Bale did all those years ago. And there was De Zerbi like jumping up and down, having a little sort of stranglehold with Vicario, and then booting a bottle of water into the crowd. It really felt like liftoff. Then we go to the second half, which took ages to kick off. I'm not really quite sure why. And in a way, Spurs kind of reverted a bit into their shells. And Everton didn't have much about them, but they definitely had more of the ball in the second half. And you did worry that as time wore on and as the West Ham goals kept going in and as Spurs kept bringing on defenders to try and see out the game, I mean, talk about the Tottenham way. I mean, that whole sort of culture and ethos was out the window. Needs-must situation of Spurs trying to hack their way to and kick the ball away to the result they needed. There were a few hairy moments. There was one standout save from Anthony Kinski. I talk about Palhinha being a fitting match winner here. Well, Kinski being the match saver to a certain extent is equally fitting after his mayhem in Madrid back in March. We got subbed off after 17 minutes after those two howlers. We all know the story, but what a comeback story! What a redemption story! He's now put himself really in a position where if they sell Vicario as we're expecting, maybe they don't need to sign another goalkeeper. Kinski's really stepped up in these weeks under De Zerbi. He's been fantastic and deserves all the plaudits for showing the cojones, back to those balls we were talking about with João Palhinha, to go and perform after such a embarrassment and humiliation of that night in Madrid. Fair play. Anyway, they got the job done. The relief, all the players hitting the deck, the fans, the atmosphere was fantastic, and they got the job done. And Spurs are going to be in the Premier League next year. And I have to say, I'm so relieved. I'm off to cover the World Cup with England soon, which I'm excited about, but it's going to be logistically quite grueling with all the flights to the various games and covering England back in Kansas between each of them. If I had to do it alongside having to cover a Spurs relegation story, as much as I'm sure the violins are out for a privileged position I'm in, uh, I'm still was thinking, dreading to think like, how many big stories were coming along. We have players moving on, which I'm sure will still be the case, but turmoil behind the scenes if they had got relegated. Given the £250 million sort of black hole that was on the line had they gone down, coupled with a massive World Cup with England, would have been could have been quite grueling, but thankfully that's not the case. Obviously there's going to be a lot of change, I imagine, with the playing squad in the summer, and there'll be plenty of stories and plenty of things to try and find out and write about that. But generally it'll be positive because they're going to be in the Premier League next season, and that leads me on to next year. So first of all, credit to the players, credit to Palhinha, credit to Kinski, but most credit has to go to Roberto De Zerbi. When he came in, while Spurs had only just dropped into the relegation zone by the time he kicked off against Sunderland, this team looked dead and buried. Honestly, the confidence was shot. 1 point from 7 games in the league they had taken when De Zerbi had come in. And I just couldn't see it. I thought other teams were on the up. Spurs were playing so badly. They lacked so much attacking threat. Injuries were piling up. Everything was going against them. And he's come in and he's been Mr. Positivity from the beginning. He's had no time for negativity. He's tried to boost the players' confidence. He's tried to do everything he can to get them to remember that they're good players, including showing them old clips of their YouTube highlights. And it's just about paid off. He's made them more organised defensively. He's made them better to watch. There's more patterns of play that were lacking, definitely under Thomas Frank, and obviously Tudor, albeit he didn't have much of a time to implement those methods. And he's lifted confidence, and he's done the job fantastically well. And I'm now very excited to see what might happen next season, because I thought whichever team, a big team, and probably be the same for Chelsea next year under Alonso, who aren't in Europe next season, if they can get it together, and Tottenham are definitely categorised like this, they will have to do some big player trading. They need to bring in some good players and ship out some players who aren't good enough. But if they get it right, that pared down fixture list, just like we saw in the season, I guess, when they made it to into the Europa League, when they qualified for them, I think it could really play into their hands. And under De Zerbi, with his style of management, his style of play, it could be really, really exciting. I think a lot of players are going to move on. Christian Romero was here in the end, despite a hoo-ha whether he wouldn't be or would be. I mean, whatever you think about that, I don't know. He was here in the end, so I guess that's what matters. But I still am half expecting him to move on this summer. I'm quite liking the idea, if Van der Ven is staying, of him and Luka Vuskovic next season to really form a centre-back for years to come. I mean, De Zerbi's already talked about Vuskovic being talked about Van der Ven being the best left-sided defender in the Premier League, so it could be really tasty. Yes, other players may leave. Vicario we're expecting to go. Wouldn't be surprised if Porro left. What they do there at right back, whether they go with Spence, who he hasn't really seemed to fancy that much, or they bring in someone else, I don't know. But I think there's a lot of reason to be optimistic. They've got to get the right signings in the right places. Madison's coming back. Hopefully, Kulusevski's coming back. But it's just the way he plays football, De Zerbi, is a reason to get excited. All these fans around here, they will be excited about watching Tottenham again. And it's been a long time since we've said that, because as much as Andrew, when he first came in and obviously delivering the Europa League, was fantastic, that most of that last season, bar in the Europa League run, was pretty demoralising. They had some moments, some amazing wins, Man City away, Man United away, Villa at home, but there were a lot of reasons to be down on the dumps, largely because of injuries. Then we had Thomas Frank, who, I'm not going to go over old ground here, but really proved to be completely incompatible with the way Tottenham wants to play. And then Tudor, and now De Zerbi. And I feel like De Zerbi has the sort of game to make people excited and make Tottenham exciting for other teams, other fans to watch again. That's what they were under Postecoglou in those first 10 games. Everyone wanted to watch Spurs, probably even their bitterest rivals probably begrudgingly wanted to watch Tottenham play because it was so exciting. And I think that we can see those days again, and it can be successful. They've got to get it right in the summer. There's been a lot of lessons got to be learned from Johan Langer, from um, Vino Venkatesham, from the Lewis family. They've got to do a lot of things right. They've got to get in some of the big characters. I really want to see them invest heavily in wingers out wide if they can, because I think it's crucial to De Zerbi's style of play. Moani, obviously, the loan hasn't worked out. I'm not convinced by what they've got at the moment. Kulusevski, we're not sure what he's going to be like when he comes back. Odebear's out with an ACL anyway, but I've not been wholly convinced by him. Anyway, Tell's got potential, but I think they need to get some top quality players in those positions. And if they can somehow do that, and it's easier said than done, they tried to do it with Semenyo this season, to be fair, and didn't get him, then they could be in business. I would like to see João Palhinha re-signed, whether it be on a loan or permanent. I know he can have progressive passing limitations, but I think, as I said from the top of this video, he brings balls, he brings leadership, he brings goals. I think he'd be an addition in this particular moment the Spurs are in. But they also need to bring some more technical quality to the team as well. So there's a lot to be done. But there is every reason to be optimistic now going forward. And I don't think I would have said that. I definitely didn't say that just a few weeks ago. And I think that is really thanks to Roberto De Zerbi. He was effectively Johan Langer and Vino Venkatesham and the Lewis's family, their own Project Hail Mary. But it paid off. It paid off big time. They're staying in the Premier League. And now we can all look forward to with excitement. But let me know your thoughts, guys. Is that the fair summation of what happened today? What's going forward? Is Roberto De Zerbi, can he do no wrong? What needs to be changed about this team? Who needs to go? Who needs to stay? I'd love to hear your thoughts. Cheers, guys.